Welcome back to Software Without Borders, where we explore the ever-evolving world of software and its impact on businesses and industries worldwide. I'm your co-host, Andy Hilliard, CEO of Accelerance.
And I'm Olivier Poulard, Managing Director of Software Strategies at Accelerance.
Today, we're incredibly excited to have Mike Hostetler join us. Mike is a distinguished AI/ML specialist, a seasoned entrepreneur, and a true leader in global software development. He currently leads as engineering team lead at ServiceCore, driving significant AI transformation and boasts a unique blend of C-suite executive vision with hands-on engineering prowess. Mike, we're thrilled to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So, I always like to start these shows with a little retrospect and context building in terms of your career, or specifically your career trajectory, from building open source projects like jQuery to leading enterprise AI transformations. I find everyone's career path these days, especially in technology and moving into AI transformation, as fascinating. So I find yours equally, if not more fascinating. But, what I really want to know about you specifically is sort of what has drawn you in, what life events, how are you wired? What is your DNA around software innovation? And what has been your approach to leading diverse teams evolved across your various experiences?
To start off with, I describe myself as a builder. And anybody who really kind of sits down and looks at a problem and builds towards a specific outcome, you start with, what is the problem? How am I going to solve it? And I've found my way to solve that in software. I've a lot of curiosity, and you can kind of see that with the places that my career has taken me, into the open source world, then into the world of business, then into corporate, and then through a couple of shorter stints in crypto, but now really diving into AI. I think that builder with a curiosity focus has really been the tie that strings all of those things together.
Has there been anything, even looking back to when you're a mere kid, and the classes you took and the things you got involved with, and then leading into your first jobs and graduate school work or whatever, is there been something that just you knew you were a builder?
So yeah, it started off early on. I mean, this is a deep cut, but one of the early stories, we had a PC at home, like maybe many others did. Junior high, Windows 3.1 just came out. There was a little QBasic icon, did not come from a family with a tech background, and I found a QBasic book at the library, taught myself to code, really basic text adventure game type stuff, and found a couple of friends, started this. Well, then the internet comes out. I worked all summer to earn $50, and I won't tell you what year this was, to buy a 14.4K modem. Parents didn't quite understand what this was. So went to the store, started reading it. They're not too keen on having the phone line wrapped up for hours on end with little Mike, browsing the internet. And there was no web at this point. Mosaic hadn't come out. This is bulletin board system stuff. Yeah. And no, they took the money, they bought me a BB gun instead and said, go play outside. The true story, that was how it started off. I eventually got my modem and was privileged to kind of see the internet grow up. And I got a real sense with those early experiences of what web infrastructure looked like. I was in high school during the .com boom. I had a little extra time on my hands senior year and wanted to, instead of find a fast food job, decided I wanted to be a web developer, no prior skills, found a company to take me on minimum wage and built sites for local companies using table layout, spacer.gif, and these early technologies that helped form what grew into and became the foundation of the web. Picked it up, went to college, got a CS degree. I originally started out with kind of a dual electrical engineering and computer science, but really fell in love with the software side and just the ability to iterate and build things there and the speed of it. I grew from there, went into career and just found my way from there. And again, that's where the curiosity picked up. I really spent a lot of extra time outside of work, and that motivation just to learn, understand all of this stuff drove me to get a real comprehensive base of experience that I stand on today.
Yeah, that's interesting. After so many years, I'm still, in awe about the magic of creating something brand new, from a few keystrokes. I mean, I think it's amazing. Yeah, my career started the same way as yours.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. And I want to hear a little bit about, the introduction. I don't want to say advent, but the introduction and the evolution of ML and AI into this, life of wonderment. When the internet, started, and what you were able to do and build, and now, like, how is that changed or modified or enhanced sort of your trajectory? Like, how did you change, and how has that changed the way you are approaching being a builder?
So, like many in technology, had worked alongside data scientists, ML specialists in various points of my career, but it was kind of seen as a specialization that I simply wasn't focused in on. Right, you grow in your career, you go deeper in certain things, and you have to pick and choose. Chat GPT was kind of that Cambrian moment where, whoa, this can do something more. First thing I did is, can it code? Right. And so I think that was sort of the started the snowball of this phase for me. In parallel, I was at a company that was doing some infrastructure work with crypto. So we were building a decentralized digital ocean, and crypto has a interesting and colorful just background, and there's some pros and cons. Definitely picked up a few things. Decentralized systems, distributed computing. There's a lot of great work going on in the crypto world. The finance side didn't, frankly, interest me as much. So through that effort, built out a lot of bots, and I use that word very intentionally to differentiate it from kind of what we consider and define agents to be now. But the bots were, have some sort of stimulus. I have a chat message come in, I have a price change, and I need to react to that in an intelligent way. And one of my favorite things as I've kind of researched this whole space is that this idea of autonomous programs has a long history in computer science, and we're just building on the shoulders of it, going back to papers written in the 60s and 70s. But through that, I got a taste of building programs that interacted with on-chain programs, frankly. And from there, shifted and decided to spend even more time in AI. And that eventually led to this next evolution, which was the agent space, where agents became more available. And I was able to build on that bot perspective, all the work I had done to just how these flows worked. And I bring a little bit of an interesting, a very opinionated, strong opinions, weakly held type thing flavor to bots and agents, in that I really believe strongly that a lot of the agents out there now, the core workflow is driven by an LLM and tool calls. And so we have this enormous group of engineers building, thinking that all there is. And really there's not. There's far deeper, far richer background of building bots and agents in, call it, classical AI or other AI algorithms. And so my unique approach has been to make sure that the core of any bots or agents I build doesn't require an LLM, follows more of the traditional, trigger, plan, execute flow, and LLMs are an add-on to it, but we're still, again, taking into account a lot of that foundational technology and learning from papers from a long time ago. And that so far has really started to bear fruit, which is fun.
That's amazing. I think that's a unique perspective and unique approach. And I think, like us, I think you're thinking that AI in the enterprise is not just about technology. It's a lot bigger than just technology, right? So we always talk about people, process, technology, data. And in your case, I think you mentioned organizational design and orchestration. You even floated the idea of a chief agent officer. That's a good, yeah, it's a new role, of course, but that's some. I think it's a role that's going to be quite critical in the next few years. How does this manifest in the real world scenarios, and how can companies, in the end, avoid intelligence hyperinflation?
Setting the stage for this a little bit, I spent some time in the corporate world. One of the roles was as VP of Enterprise Technology for Cars.com, publicly traded, highly regulated, running my responsibilities was running IT and all the back office technology for 1,000-person organization. We had the added benefit of seeing some rapid change pushed on us during the COVID period and just what that did. So I had a front row seat and was a leader in that world. And a lot of my kind of thoughts and perspective on this chief agent officer is based in that. So as we look forward to where organizations are going, a lot of big modern organizations are split into departments and they're kind of broken down through really the org chart, right, to simplify it.
Mm-hmm.
We see AI being adopted very organically right now. There are a couple of examples of top-down holistic adoption, but to contrast, again, going back to that VP role at Cars.com, there were two ways software got in. One, I'm going to negotiate with Salesforce. We have one contract. Or I have people putting on their expense cards, small software, and just solving problems along the way. And over the last 18, 24 months, we've seen AI really thrive in the bottom-up approach. So that's, again, kind of key idea number one. As this grows, it becomes very, let's call it department specific. So we've seen success so far in, I'd call it 3 areas, starting with sort of the biggest impact to the smallest would be first coding and engineering, game changer. My industry, I've been coding professionally for about 25 years, fundamentally changed, fundamentally. There's no going back, and it's just the reality we're absorbing now going forward. Sales automation, and in the sales world, a lot of what I call bookkeeping tasks and some of the outbound sales efforts, sales motions are being automated by AI. Marketing, a little more hit and miss. I think there's still this element where great marketing has an element of taste, and taste cannot truly be replicated by LLMs. If the taste becomes defined and correct enough, LLMs do a great job of delivering that through, again, automating some of the busy work. But so there's places, there's sparks of where it will eventually be used, but these are all done within the context of those specific environments. And so context is the key word there. LLMs get driven through, now the phrase is context engineering. What text information do you give an LLM? That's element number one.
Yeah.
Element number two is the workflow for how that LLM context that's submitted and the response that's received is then broken up and orchestrated into a valuable result. And there's always a step outside of that. So again, just jump back into coding, because coding is kind of the anchor for the patterns I think we can extrapolate into the future. Claude Code, dramatic successful product built off of the Anthropic models. Video breakdown that we can share and put in the show notes. Most of Claude Code is not LLMs. It's not. It is context engineering. So you have a giant context. Think of it almost as a database with slots in it.
Yeah.
They insert text into those slots, submit the text, get an LLM response, parse that out, and then act on it. Editing files, searching files, editing and modifying your to-do list. And a lot of the cutting edge engineering right now happens at that level. So let's take that example. Sales, marketing, I think they're a little bit behind, but then step into the future. Let's include all departments. Finance.
Yeah.
There was a company that was funded a couple of weeks ago, $20 million Series A to renovate ERP and finance. I think that's going to become a very popular funded vertical because there's so much money in it. But these all operate within a silo. So the chief agent officer was my attempt to sort of cast a vision and plant a flag that the CEO at the top wants to be able to understand and create a situation that the agents living in the silos underneath in each department can fluidly work with one another and aren't stuck into these artificial walls. So let's break down that problem. Two pieces of it, the people side, the technical side. The technical side will get solved. There are solutions out there. People will coordinate and figure that out. I hope there's a lot of activity. That's where innovation comes from. The people side, we all know, is a little bit more challenging. Now we're going to hypothesis mode. My hypothesis is that organizations will begin to simplify themselves into small, unique teams that will still be organized into a hierarchy. I think organizational hierarchies are inherently human. We organize ourselves in hierarchies. We've seen attempts at alternate organization structures, holacracy, if anybody remembers that from maybe 10 years ago or so. They're not that successful. I really like anchoring in the now of what would work in a publicly traded company. But I do see autonomous teams living in this type of hierarchy where they begin to resemble networks of teams working to achieve an end. But because LLMs are such a potent multiplier to their work, they will be empowered within some jurisdictional guardrails. Because again, you got to work together, you got to coordinate, you got to have leadership.
Yeah.
They'll be empowered to go execute on a specific goal. When you have that and you have these pods of people working together and coordinating, you need somebody to conduct the orchestra. Enter in chief agent officer. So part of this is there's a thought process here. There's probably a book here in the future, but that's my hypothesis of where I see it going, and I think most importantly emphasizes the value of the people involved. Right? Again, as a leader, I tell my team now, leadership is an evergreen skill. You never grow wrong at learning more and more leadership. I will learn leadership. I'll follow that curiosity till my last breath. You can't ever finish that. And I like those things because I can, stay in that builder, that learner mode to learn more and more every day and get better at it, refine my leadership skills. And I think that will become a significant people leadership problem as we all go through this wall of fear of what's going to happen to my job. I think most of them are going to be okay. But then as organizations evolve, there's always going to be laggards, right? So let's go back to the innovator's dilemma. We know the curve of early adopters. I think that AI is going to accelerate everything. So this is the other hypothesis. We're seeing some of the economic data come out that AI, and again, this stuff gets a little bit fuzzy. I was looking at a report this morning about how much has AI really impacted quarterly GDP. If you squint, I think you can make the case. So let's squint together for a moment, but it will accelerate and push everything forward. And the winners are going to adopt more of this AI-centric strategy because it's just so effective, effective.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. And then one of the dangers, of AI to me is the way it is today, and because you said it's growing organically, is this hyperinflation, but also the missteps that companies could take, scaling AI agents, for instance. So what would what advice would you give, C-level leaders, to scale, as needed?
There's so much. So let's maybe first paint a picture of where that future is going. So
Uh-huh.
when we have these magic boxes that can answer a lot of questions that we've often have been costly. So let's talk in terms of just the cost of answering this stuff. That's why you hired experts, people with experience and judgment to build out or accomplish a given goal in an organization. That is changing. So that fundamental equation of why you hired people, what they do, and the work that they did is changing. So let's take, again, I've made this statement before. As a software engineer with 25 years of experience, 90% of my job is now obsolete out of the tasks that I would do on a day-to-day basis. That last 10% is 100x more valuable. So when you net that out, how should a CEO then leverage my expertise in a given organization? So, and this is my reality day to day. I am one of the more senior members of my organization now. We have 50 engineers. So task number one, train everybody else. Like, we cannot get up the curve fast enough. We want the center of gravity of learning expertise to move up that curve as fast as possible. And the unfortunate reality is that the people that aren't able to adapt won't have a place. So that's coming, but there's an opportunity for it, right? There's an opportunity to get up the curve. And what skills should we train for? So that's the next question. I have used this list of 5 from a gentleman named Nate B. Jones. We can add that to the show notes. This is not an original thought, but in the age of intelligence hyperinflation, there's 5 things that will be valuable. So I'm going to check my list really quick too. Taste, as a human, being able to create, decide, this is tasteful now, this is elegant now. LLMs are not equipped and probably never will be to be able to make that judgment call. 2, extreme agency. The phrase online, you can just do things, is far more than just a meme. You have to train for a junior engineer to simply do what they think is right and just go for it. You have to have this extreme form of, I'm just going to go do it, because the cost of writing that software, the cost of fixing that bug is so low, of actually sitting down to write the code, you can afford to attempt to fix it 10 times with only one of them working. That is a big calculus that's now changed. Number 3, learning velocity. We have to allocate a lot more of our time to learning to be able to keep up the curve. Coding agents have evolved, but you have to spend more time teaching, learning, growing for the humans to become practiced in these new tools. So one aspect of the new tools, and why I don't think we see a lot of AI training programs out there, is that because they're ineffective. The most effective way is to go build something with Claude Code, not teach somebody about Claude Code. You see prompt libraries, but the prompt libraries are free. People that monetize them, it's a bottle rocket product. They're make a little bit of money in the launch, and then the prompts are out there, and you just have to move forward.
Yeah.
Number 3, intent horizon. LLMs have a very short time span of their intent to accomplish a task. Meaning, and then the Meter group has done some great research on this. Humans are able to hold and execute on a specific task for 60 to 90 minutes, or executives and leaders are able to plan projects and tasks spanning weeks and months, maybe even years. LLMs are not equipped to do that now. So humans are better equipped to plan long range and do long range coordination and think calendar time, pure calendar time. So intent horizons, number 4. And then interruptibility. LLMs, you cannot pause and restart them very easily. So humans can context switch. It's not great. We all know this, but so those 5 in this world, we optimize for that. And I think that, like a lot of change, nobody knows what they're doing. Anybody who says they are is lying, straight up. The only alternative is to get in and do it and figure it out. And my attitude and what I tell my team is, I will win, you will win by learning faster than the competitor. That is it right now. This will change. Barriers will arise, but we're in this magic moment that is so much fun. And it is literally how fast you can go and how fast you can learn. It's general learning at the moment. My ability to code with Claude Code, AMP, any of Augment Code, any of the big coding agents right now is easily transferable between each. There's some nuances, but call it 5 to 10% difference. But it's our ability to build software with these tools at scale it's never seen anything like it. It's so much fun. So
Wow.
much fun right now.
I actually didn't know prior to this call that you had such in-depth, not only experience and knowledge, but commitment to sort of learning and absorbing and sharing, with outside groups. So that's been a really fascinating insight that I've achieved over the last 25 minutes. But I'm going to take a slight off ramp, and then we're going to go back onto the AI conversation, because I did want to touch upon another aspect of your managerial experience in life, and obviously one that also rings true to accelerance, being globally distributed engineering. And we've gone through these revolutions. It seems like revolutions are coming in every 5 years now, as opposed to every 100 years, right? The internet and globalization, and now AI. But you've led 100% distributed teams with rapid remote transitions, like at Cars.com, right? Especially during COVID, and COVID, forced a lot of us into this new reality. I'd like to know, like, from a leadership perspective, what are to you the most critical strategic and cultural considerations to form and maintain productivity and cohesion across these teams? What has been your experience, and how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been running remote teams for 19 years. It's the anchor I go back to is it's always just very human. You have to replicate and recreate some of that human interaction in a work environment. So there's the basics, right? Let's start there. Home office, quiet space, consistent work hours, or depending on time zone distribution, core work hours. There's several ways to solve this now, and I think that information is mostly out there in how teams get built. Once you have that, I think it's really, really important to acknowledge and understand that teams that get together and only meet, interact, build something together over a video, if that's as far as you go, you'll end up missing it. Because work, whether we're in an office environment together or we're 1,000 miles away, is about trusting one another, about building something together and producing something that we can both be proud of. So again, my stump speech, I go back to leadership. Leadership is really key. Leadership of yourself in that environment, leadership of others, whether it be to a peer, to a teammate, to somebody outside of your department, and how you persuade. But you at the end of the day, we're all still very human, working in this alien almost environment of looking at one another through screens.
Yeah.
And the more you can do to replicate and create an environment where you are just two people the same goal, overlapping at this time and space in our short lives, right? That can kind of create that little extra magic that helps people come together. I'm at times was believe that you could really get away with 100% remote. Changed my mind on this. I think that 95% is about right. You need to be able to get together, get a little bit of work done together, shared projects. I'm a big fan of the classic breaking bread and going have a meal with one another.
Yeah.
There's something just unique about sitting down with one another, again, regardless of background. And it's amazing. I've had the privilege of meeting and working with people all over the world, and it never fails. Just the moment of connection that happens.
Absolutely.
And how that gets amplified into a working relationship after that, just there's no substitute. And so that's, again, kind of where I lead from. That's my perspective, and been borne out through years of experience, mistakes, learning the hard way at times. But
Mike, I think you've probably just answered this question, but I did want you to have a chance to augment it if you wanted to. But like the one practice you found indispensable for keeping remote engineers aligned on complex work, is there an enhancement to that?
Yeah. So I typically will give them more than they can handle. And engineers classically often, want to show off what they can do. They rarely, at times, or maybe if they haven't worked in a team environment, they can struggle with feedback and input and refinements. And a great team is one where there's kind of no ego and no one person has to drive the bus.
Yeah.
So I do also coach on this too. There are two hierarchies, two ways to organize people in any software engineering organization. The first is the hierarchy on paper, who you report to. That's legal. Businesses are not the public, and you can go through all that kind of stuff of this is a job, is an employment agreement. You can explain what that means. There is another parallel, but sometimes shuffled group of who to listen to, who to look for expertise. And that comes down to engineering experience, trust, leadership. And so I often like to flip the script on that second hierarchy and take a junior engineer, give them a project that's a little bit over their head, and support them throughout, because their growth is accelerated through that. And oftentimes they are a little bit insecure coming into a team of seniors. And it's my job as a leader to set the right environment for them to succeed, but to do it in a way where they can begin learning those skills of taking that feedback. I find that not only do they improve, but the team dynamic really comes together. And if they are in over their heads just a little bit, asking for help, these different things, a lot of the other noise goes away. And so that's kind of my number one trick.
Wow.
Yeah, they come together naturally, because the first one is very controlling. So that doesn't work very well, because typically the person that controls things doesn't know what's going on the floor. Whereas the second one is more empowering and influential. So influence becomes more important than control, and you allow people to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. That's how you learn, in fact.
Yeah.
Something I'd like to pick on something, because from the beginning of this podcast, I mean, it's pretty obvious to me that you're very people oriented. I mean, everything you say is about people.
Yeah.
Right. And I've come to somewhat of a conclusion here that, ironically enough, AI may bring people together. We've been extremely technology centric, but it seems that AI will have to bring people together to make it work, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So that's an
Olivier, I want to hear a little bit more about what how you envision this.
AI is going to I think through this kind of innovation creative process, I think will bring us into these smaller teams where we are reaching out and working with people across different industries, across different departments. But I personally, I've done a lot of different things. I'm at this point where I have I've explored the different scenarios of employment, of solo contracting, working in enterprise, working in nonprofits, working in the government, and I've had kind of a colorful career. I, for the next 10 years, just want to get with a group, a smaller group, and I want to build something that positively impacts customers, people outside. But that core group is part of what I envision and what I want to spend my time pouring into, again, younger engineers for the next 10 years. And so this answers some of the confusing, some at times twists and turns of my career. I did the VP thing. You get to a certain point, it's like, well, you figure out what it's like. My goal was C-suite in a public company. No, quality of life. When you start realizing what you can buy or how you can orchestrate quality of life, that's not the quality of life that I wanted and the impact that I wanted to have. And as I look forward to, again, the next decade for myself, small team, very focused, living out my creative best self, which means two things. One, again, delivering something to the world, but then pouring into a smaller team and helping them grow along the way. I've done the whole life plan reflecting thing. You know what came up at the top of my proudest achievements is the engineers that have worked in organizations that I've been privileged to lead or have worked directly for me that have gone on to do great things. That's the yardstick. That's for me, that's the yardstick of, again, how I want to be measured and how, when I look back, the impact that I would want to have. There's other things too, right? That's the builder piece as well. But from the leadership side, that's kind of the what I envision as just the best mix of what the future can hold for me.
That's such a refreshing take. I don't think I've heard that on the podcast yet, but I'm glad you're reflecting on, your blink of a moment here on this earth and sort of what motivates you and what gives you happiness and energy. And I think we get into this business mode where we're looking at OKRs and trying to advance up the hierarchy chain and the person with the most toys wins and all this sort of like, ways to measure things that, but anyway, it's really refreshing. Speaking of measurement, when you do look at distributed collaboration, what sort of measurement tools or measurement aspects do you look at? How do you measure success or how do you measure lack of success?
Could you contextualize that a little bit more of, are we...
I mean, when you're working with distributed teams,
I
mean, when you're working with distributed teams, what sort of guidelines or how do you measure progress? How do you measure success? How do you measure whether or not this is working vis-a-vis in an alternative model, just in-house or under the same roof or what have you?
When it comes to remote work, I think there's obviously the employment survey type stuff. Is the organization achieving on its goals that's needed from management? I think it's really important to set clarity is important, measurable goals. But again, I'm a big fan of setting those goals and then asking the team to craft the plan to do that. And that's where the engagement of that team, I would say, is probably the most important measurement that I look for.
Sure.
We've worked long enough in Slack. We've worked long enough in these distributed tools where you develop a sixth sense, at least for your kind of immediate circle of how things are going. And this gets characterized in a lot of the values of bring your whole self to work, or show up as a whole person rather than the work persona and the work mask that we sometimes bring. And I think that in a remote setting, going back to my comment around, it has to be human first. You have to be able to have enough of a relationship with those close people to be able to kind of ask those questions. And again, it depends on the relationship you would have, whether it's a peer, whether it's somebody on your team, whether it's a leader, to be able to, hey, how's it going? Case in point, funny personal story at the moment, got called for grand jury in the month of August. Every Thursday, I drive up to my local courthouse and spend a day with other citizens reviewing cases. Last week was the first week. Told the product owner on our team, I'm like, I don't know what, the only thing that changed, because I had a rough week.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's got to be this grand jury thing. For whatever reason, hearing the crimes of my local county, which is not that bad, there was a weird exhaustion to it. And we meet every Monday morning. We start our week together. We spend 30 minutes, and I'm like, hey, this is going on. I don't understand it. I'm going to be a little weird, but just that level of vulnerability I think you got to start there and model that.
Yeah.
Brings our relationship closer together of, it's just, this is who I am. And maybe that's getting older. Maybe that's knowing who you are.
Yeah, I'm curious about stakeholders that might ask you. It's like, is this business model working? Could it be better? Could it be faster? Could it be cheaper? I'm getting pitched by some alternative models that say they could do everything that your model is doing for half the price at twice the speed. And I'm thinking, well, how do you respond to stakeholders in terms of cohesion and commitment and lack of low turnover and productivity, and like to say, like, don't fall for the smoke and mirror, don't fall for the next greatest thing. This is working. Can we improve it? We're always improving. We're introducing new ways of improving. AI, etc. Just I know this dynamic always exists, and people questioning whether your leadership over your business model is as efficient and effective and measuring as productive as it could be.
Yeah, and the quick rule of thumb I've always said is in person is easier, but the ceiling is lower. So remote, to be a great in-person company, takes less resources and less investment in your people. To be a great remote company takes more, but the ceiling is higher in what that same group of people can do. And the two ingredients are culture and leadership. So much could be said about each of those, but there are many examples of wonderful, high-performing remote teams. Some companies get stuck in the middle. The hybrid model is the third, just even more difficult than an exclusive one or the other. But so the other stat I quote on this one, and I have not found the reference, but years ago in the 80s when they were researching remote work, or at least remote work as they defined it, and they did a study in one of the really large office, IBM, think IBM, you're overlooking 400 cubicles in a wide open room.
Sure.
They found that from one individual's desk, circle 30 feet around, anybody outside that 30-foot circle could be 1,000 miles across the country and still have that same relationship. So when we think remote, what's local? It's 30 feet. And so, when you start defining this stuff, I think it gets used as a little bit of a crutch at times.
Definitely.
To obscure, again, I call it like personal growth and leadership stuff. This is why I go back to, can never get enough of that.
I agree that to me, remote work requires leadership, whereas local might require only management. I think that's probably the big difference between it. Not to say that locally you don't need leadership, but you don't need it as much as you would need it for distributed work, for instance. So yeah, absolutely, completely agree with you. Let's switch to so we've talked about people for extensively. So let's switch to two other topics. One is technology, and then the other one is on more on the business side. But let's start with technology again, and more specifically on AI tools and software engineering. So I know you've used a number of open source AI SDKs and tools like ChatGPT and Cursor, etc., to build AI agents. But from a pragmatic engineering standpoint, what do you think are the current capabilities and limitations of those Gen AI tools and in driving real value beyond just the novelty of it?
So let's again qualify this a little bit. I would say in software engineering, and there's two sides of this that have emerged, what I call a greenfield project versus a brownfield project. And in each of those types, there's a field of maybe a dozen AI coding tools that have emerged. There are YouTubers we could again point to that break down the capability of each of these tools every month because it's constantly changing. My tool of choice is AMP by SourceGraph. I am a big fan of AMP. AMP is unique for two reasons. One, it doesn't have a model picker, so you cannot choose Claude 4 versus GPT-5. Generally, there's a couple exceptions. And it both has, it passes on the full cost of inference to you, the developer, versus the Claude codes. There are others that are using VC money to offer all you can eat plans at a certain tier, $20 a month, $200 a month, that are not passing on the full cost. So there's an arbitrage moment right now funded by VCs, very similar to how Uber started.
Sure.
$2 taxi rides were a heck of a deal.
Yeah. Whatever happened to
Doesn't
those?
happen now.
Jeez. Bait and switch.
Right. They got us. Same thing's happening in inference. So you got to that's where the leading edge of this is, and it evolves weekly. The two best for the what I call the greenfield world is AMP is incredibly good at building out and scaffolding large projects. This is where the skill comes in. You have to learn how to plan well. Planning is a separate skill. You have to learn how to prompt well and use the different techniques, learn the tool itself. Part of why I've dedicated myself to one tool specifically and gone deep is because I get frankly, I feel like about a 20% boost using that versus others in my effectiveness. I'm also using Elixir mostly, so there's caveats on kind of which language you're working with. Versus, again, barely use GPT-5. Came out 4 or 5 days ago. It saw on Twitter, it's not as effective with Elixir, so I'm not even going to worry about it. I got things to do and move on, and I'm not the model evaluator guy. In an organization, then it becomes I'm the solo case, and I'm the solo case that can spend $1,000 a month on these tools, and that's just built into my kind of world at the moment. That's not typical. In our organization, we've been very mindful for how we roll this out to make sure we give training, and we have chosen Cursor for this reason. It was a great entry-level point. It provides our junior engineers with, here's again a tool you can use, fixed price, $40 a month for the enterprise plan per seat. That's acceptable. We did do the usage pricing. It got used in like 48 hours. But it was a cap, right? Because as an organization, you need to put some controls around this. This goes back to my IT days.
For sure.
For how these tools get rolled out. We did roll out AMP, but it is selective. And there's been extra training that's gone into AMP is only useful in certain situations. And it's important to equip the engineers who have access to AMP with the ability to like pick and choose. I'm not going to be there to tell them this task ticket, yeah, AMP is good for AMP, this isn't. But I want them to each get the reps in. There's no problem with failure. You're not going to burn $10 and anybody get mad at you. It's not about that. I want you to use the tools more, but I want you to begin getting that intuitive sense of the right tool for the job. AMP is a fire hose. I can ask AMP to spin up, and there's techniques to let AMP run for 24 hours and build out and migrate wholesale parts of a code base through this recursive Ralph Wiggum technique, which is a whole fun thing. There's a lot of memes at the bleeding edge of this. Ralph Wiggum is one of them, but you basically turn AMP on in a loop and you kiss your credit card goodbye because you'll come back with a giant piece of software in the morning versus Cursor is far more surgical. And I need to make this edit, it aids, and it kind of comes down to a different altitude, and there's different skill sets for using both. So the other kind of aspect of this that I talk about with our leadership is everyone on the organization is on that learning curve. Our job is to move everyone up the learning curve, but we have to acknowledge, and because we're learning this on the fly, frankly, what steps they go through. Half of our organization is on the LAMP stack, PHP, MySQL, Angular, and a custom PHP framework. The other half is Firebase TypeScript. The model effectiveness on both code bases is different, right? You can't easily jump. So learn that as well. You have to be and delegate who's going to kind of lead this effort. Tooling has been a big thing. So we have one greenfield project. We have one brownfield project. Going back to that, LLMs and AMP as the fire hose is far more effective in the greenfield project because we made some design decisions early on that make it really easy to grok through the patterns. We built the templates. We built this as an LLM first code base. The brownfield, no. So the tools have a different level, the same tool, different level of effectiveness at creating correct edits in the brownfield code base versus the greenfield. And so as we figured that out, it's very contextual. Like you, as an engineer, as a leader in that organization, I'm down there doing a lot of these experiments and figuring it out, talking with the senior engineers. What are you learning? And we're all learning together because there's no other choice right now. No other choice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems to me that we're going back to where we were maybe 30 years ago. I had a discussion about this earlier, where we're going to be, as human, more involved with the engineering and less with the programming. So if you think about it, 30 years ago, we didn't have all that stuff. So we had to spend quite a bit of time to engineer properly, as opposed to jumping into the code and somewhat engineering as we were coding. That's why so many systems are in the way they are today, brittle, not scalable, etc. Because people didn't think about engineering a system. They thought about programming something. Correct. Now with AI, it's the exact opposite again. So which is great, because now we're going back to what I like, which is engineering systems, solutions. Correct. And not so much and the programming is always exciting, of course, but that's it's not exactly the end in the end, right?
Yeah.
You sound like a Fred Brooks fan.
Yeah. So, but my engineering is my passion. So that's to me, programming is not the end; it's a means to an end.
Yeah.
So, right. But so talking about this, by the way, we hear about AI improving, productivity, etc. So, in your mind, does it save time? Does it improve quality? And if anything, does it have shortfalls?
AI is very good at doing whatever we want it to. And it can do all of those things, but there's limits because any output from AI has to be interpreted and ingested by the human operator to turn it into high quality. And yes, there are growing systems. This has been kind of always my issue with AGI and whatever that means, because the definition has moved significantly. So you're going to take this intelligent piece of neural weights and you would like it to autonomously grow and build things when, without human involvement, it simply reflects the training that its operators put into it, right? So the human has to be the one to operate the AI and then internalize and turn it into something of value. So this is a difficult, very abstract question, because then next question is, how do you decide whether it's valuable? Right? You and I could sit down with the same user story, use the same exact tools, and come out with two separate outcomes. Who gets to judge what's valuable given the spec? Big meta question I think we're going to have to answer in the age of AI. And that's a whole other podcast. I have some deep thoughts on it and how you'll be able to build signal. Because I think systems, and specifically economic systems, are going to force us to answer it. It'll be answered badly at first, but it'll be a journey. But so go back to your coding thing. The biggest bottleneck for us and our team right now isn't writing code anymore. It's reviewing it. We have quality standards in our SDLC, and the automated code reviewers they're okay. They offer some good stuff, but they need reviewed. So we have actually pushed into generating a lot with AI, but we've pulled back because the engineering suffers if we go too fast. So we have had kind of reached this, what I call a local maximum of AI source code generation that we are not going to be able to overcome unless we rewrite the software. Now, that's a dirty word, right? Rewrite's a dirty word. As a senior engineer, you just don't say that, because that in our culture exposes that maybe you just don't like it and you can't work on a brownfield project. That's changing. Because from a cost perspective, my ability to go in, catalog every feature as defined by the source code, as defined by a product spec, come out the other end with a fully working, improved, upgraded piece of software is 1/100th of the cost that it was a year ago.
Yeah.
So rewrite's not such a dirty word. And what does that look like over the next 12 months? These financial cases are kind of what I think about, because they prove the point in a very, very stark way. Not always receive the best, but there's other considerations besides the money. But I think that's where it's going.
So you mentioned a few keywords here: value, cost, productivity, etc. So to me, that leads naturally to ROI, right? So how, in your mind, how critical is robust measurement and ROI definition, and ensuring that all these initiatives, AI initiatives, really produce tangible value? You use that term value, or outcome, if you will.
So this gets a little fuzzy as well, where economic terms get thrown around in the new AI world without a consistent definition of what they mean. I mean, my little bit of a snarky take is that they aren't valuable at all. ROI of an AI implementation, you can put something down on paper. One of my biggest, I've had some, say what you will about McKinsey. I think the world would be at a better place without them. Like, their definition of what ROI means is just, it's not often connected to reality. Why are we measuring the ROI in terms of a business outcome? Yes, that's part of it. The only thing that matters right now is the humans learning along the way. The ROI of us using, so we've spent, well, let's call it $20,000 hard, cash out the door cost in our engineering organization in the last 6 months. We have seen, measured by story points, which are directional at best, a velocity increase in our software production. So if you go back to just these basic economic terms of, we've produced more lines of code in the last 6 months than the trailing 6 months, with a $20,000 investment in AI tooling to these big companies.
Yeah, but more
What's the
lines of code
ROI?
doesn't mean more quality or more, in fact. It just means more lines of code.
Correct.
So
But it could be higher quality.
It could be higher quality. We've been able to, let's
yeah, but
again jump in,
quality,
maybe
the
say
problem is quality, to your point, Mike, earlier, value and quality are linked together.
yes.
Right. So if you have a lot of code that is high quality code but very low value, is that quality really?
Yeah.
I would rather have less code and higher value per line of code, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. And it's better, it's easier to maintain, even with AI, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Thinking that AI can maintain, easily millions of lines of code, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the right thing to think.
Yeah. And this gets back to what I've advocated, call it payroll, $3.5 million.
Yeah.
We've improved the skills of that group of payroll by 50%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is real value.
That's real value.
But does that also open the door? Because, I 80% of my day I'm interacting with AI in various things. My the I'm thinking I'm slashing my legal expenses by 80%. I think I'm doing things that would take me maybe 10 hours in 20 minutes, and I love the quality of it. But I'm almost thinking this enablement is allowing me to do more stuff. Uh, is it affecting market share? Is it affecting revenue? Is it affecting costs? Am I now biting off more than I should be chewing? How am I? It's it seems like it's so much potential, but I'm sometimes at a, like, when I look at the monthly P&L, for example, I'm like, how is it really reflected here? We seem to be a different organization. We seem to be more knowledgeable and be able to execute things because AI enables us to organize and to discern and to put forth an execution plan. So I feel like we're just doing things so much better, faster, less expensively. I'm thinking, how does this translate to business metrics like profitability and revenue and market share?
So again, this is where I tie it back to chief agent officer, because you'll be able to get components of that. Your cost of sales could drop by 20% because you invested in AI workflows for your sales motions. One local, again, we could put a case for that together. Your effectiveness of delivering software, high quality software, has improved by 50% because you've adopted and made an investment. This is capital efficiency, right? That's basics. How do you take the sum of those parts and turn it into something more in an organization? That's the job of the chief agent officer, because it has to be integrated. So you go down to those pods I referenced earlier. I think will be small focused teams that have engaged components of this, because again, agility, and you can pick out the buzzwords here, but to go address a market opportunity faster.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to come from, because the time investment to go from idea to test to in the market has now been shortened. And you'll be able to get real feedback, because one of the things in our society that is an arbiter of value, the public market, in the form of stock exchanges or just Main Street of what people think and whether they buy or not.
Yeah.
Shorten that cycle, because that, to me, again, that's where it comes down to, and why I think organizations, there's going to be this top-down pressure to take a giant organization that, yes, you can adopt AI and pretend to be nimble all day long. No, it's going to be that learning cycle. And the companies that make that transition will be successful, and the companies that lag will get picked apart. And it's like everything. It's not going to happen overnight. They're not making a giant sweeping prognostication here. But I try to identify the direction and trends. And one of them in AI is always build in the direction that the models themselves will improve. There are billions of dollars going into model improvement. So if my tool is so-so today on GPT-5, when GPT-10 comes out, if my tool is going to be better because of GPT-10, I'm building in the direction of model improvement. And I'm piggybacking off of all that investment in our economy. Because again, nobody knows what's going on. Like they say they do, but all you see is like the little arrows on the wind map. And you just got to point your boat in that direction and build, build, build. That's been the plan is very simple. That's been my plan all along with this stuff.
So, Mike, your insights today on leading enterprise AI transformation, orchestrating human AI workforces, and even building high-performing distributed teams have been super valuable. I really thank you for joining us on Software Without Borders.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode of Software Without Borders. If you're interested in learning more about how to navigate enterprise AI, build high-performing globally distributed teams, or optimize your software development strategy, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star rating if you would like on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you very much, Mike. Thank you. Olivier, as usual, thank you for your attendance and your help.